Hello and welcome to the 2023 Aviation Noise 101. We're glad you have joined us for this learning experience. As SFO Roundtable members or concerned individuals, understanding the complexities of aircraft noise is essential for fostering sustainable and harmonious relationship between airports, communities, and the environment. Aircraft noise has become an increasingly relevant topic as air travel continues to grow, connecting peoples and cultures across the globe. While aviation brings tremendous benefit, it poses challenges and noise is one of them. The impact of aircraft noise extends beyond the boundaries of airports, affecting communities, health, wildlife, and overall quality of life. We will start off with a short video from the SFO Community Roundtable, and then we'll go directly to brief videos from the FAA, followed by 10-15 minutes for Q&A to be answered by Joe Bird, Team Manager, FAA Air Traffic Organization. Following that, we will watch the video from HMMH Technical Consultant to the SFO Roundtable, to be followed by live Q&A by Dale, President of HMMH. We will then take a quick 5 minutes break and finish up video from SFO Airport, which will include information from the Aircraft Noise Office and SFO GBAS team. I'm manager of the SFO Aircraft Noise Office, and Paul Hanna from SFO GBAS team will answer for 10 to 15 minutes. If you still have any questions when we come to the end of each Q&A time period, please make note of your questions and we will follow up with you later. We will begin with our short video and introduction to SFO Airport Roundtable. And of time, we will not take questions about the Roundtable video, but feel free to ask at the next Roundtable meeting, or also we could us or email Kathleen and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Welcome to Aviation Noise 101. This is a 4-part video series that includes segments contributed by the Federal Aviation Administration, the San Francisco International Airport, and HMMH Technical Consultant to the SFO Roundtable. And this video is a brief introduction to the genesis, goals, and projects of the San Francisco Airport Community Roundtable. San Francisco International Airport, SFO, is owned and operated by the City and County of San Francisco, but lies entirely within the unincorporated San Mateo County. In 1981, the SFO Community Roundtable convened its first meeting, built upon legal agreements between San Francisco and San Mateo counties. Initial memberships included the counties of San Francisco and San Mateo, as well as 10 of the cities from within the San Mateo County. Today, membership includes those original counties and cities, as well as the remaining 10 additional cities within San Mateo County. Members include 1 elected representative from each of the 20 member cities and 2 counties, along with appointed officials from the San Francisco Mayor's Office, the San Francisco Airport Commission, and the Airport Land Use Committee of the City-County Association of Governments of San Mateo County. The SFO Community Roundtable meets 6 times a year for regular meetings and periodically in subcommittees, all of which are open to the public, allow for public comment, and are videotaped and archived on the Roundtable website. SFO Community Roundtable members work to achieve noise mitigation through collaboration with the San Francisco International Airport, the Federal Aviation Administration, the airlines, elected officials, and the public. The SFO Community Roundtable advocates for legislation, policies, and programs to improve the detrimental effects of aircraft noise to achieve a quieter and healthier community. The SFO Airport Director is a voting member of the SFO Community Roundtable, and he and his staff regularly attend roundtable meetings to provide airport updates. The SFO Community Roundtable and SFO jointly oversee the Fly Quiet program. This voluntary program urges the airline to use their quietest aircraft at SFO and to fly the quietest flight procedure that conditions allow. An FAA Community Engagement Officer is assigned to work with the roundtable, and other FAA staff and technical experts attend and make presentations at roundtable meetings. The SFO Community Roundtable has worked closely with the FAA on projects such as the FAA NorCal Initiative and the implementation of the noise abatement night and hush departures, southbound transitions. The airlines participate in the voluntary Fly Quiet program and receive recognitions at roundtable meetings based on points earned for flying quieter aircraft and quieter flight procedures. Representatives from the airlines can attend the roundtable meetings and respond to roundtable inquiries. The SFO Community Roundtable has had a long relationship with local members of Congress. One member introduced into Congress 8 noise mitigation bills relating to issues of importance to the roundtable and reducing aircraft noise impact. The SFO Community Roundtable is a forum for the public to share their experiences and opinions on aircraft noise and to present their recommendations for roundtable action. Often these members of the public ask why. Why can't someone, airport, FAA, local officials, or roundtable do something about airplane noise? Why can't someone mandate that airplanes stop making noise over their communities, especially at night? Well, the answer is simple, albeit quiet, undesirable. Congress has given authority to the FAA to control the airspace and prioritize use of airspace based on 2 criteria. The first criterion is safety. No question about the importance of safety. But only the other criterion stated is airspace efficiency. Just safety and efficiency. Noise is not a stated priority. And Congress has also enacted laws that restrict the ability of airports to impose mandatory noise restriction or to impose mandatory airport curfews. The SFO Community Roundtable does much of its work through its subcommittees. The Technical Working Group, TWG, considers and makes recommendations for changes to flight procedures or flight paths to reduce airplane noise to residents. The Technical Working Group is a forum for in-depth presentation as well as roundtable member discussions with technical staff from the FAA, SFO, and others. The Ground-Based Noise Subcommittee works to identify and mitigate the noise impact of aircraft takeoff and on the ground at SFO and other SFO operational noise. SFO Roundtable consultants have prepared an in-depth study on ground-based noise at SFO. This report is available on the Roundtable website. The Legislative Subcommittee reviews and advises the Roundtable on proposed legislation and FAA actions, as well as monitoring the actions of the Congressional White Sky Caucus and legislative activities of other groups. The Portable Noise Monitoring Placement Subcommittee makes recommendations for the placement of 4 SFO portable noise monitors. The Work Plan and Strategic Plan Committees develop plans for short-term and longer-term goals and priorities for Roundtable activities. The Roundtable has long focused on the detrimental effects of nighttime airplane noise. Nighttime noise is not just an annoyance, but it is a serious health issue for residents. Many health studies have found that nighttime noise, including airplane noise, may cause significant health impacts, including increased risk of cardiovascular disease, impaired control of blood glucose, and increased inflammation. In addition, sleep deprivation can interfere with learning for children. In 2016, the Roundtable made a recommendation to the FAA to create a new nighttime noise abatement flight procedure that would replace a noisier departure path. After extensive collaboration with SFO, the FAA, the airlines, the public, and a dedicated local member of Congress, the night departure southbound transition was implemented in May 2022. The actual flight path image on the left shows a typical stick departure path that is used in the nighttime for flights heading south. This noisy path takes them over sleeping residents on the peninsula and in San Francisco. The actual flight path image on the right shows a similar southbound plane, but this plane is flying the night departure southbound transition. The new nighttime noise abatement procedure that keeps planes over water, not houses, which now used during the late night hours. Since 2001, SFO and the Roundtable have urged the airline to participate in the voluntary SFO Fly Quiet program. Voluntarily using quieter airplanes and quieter nighttime flight procedure creates less nighttime noise to residents and earns points for the airlines. High-scoring airlines are recognized at the SFO Community Roundtable meeting. A ground-based augmentation system known as GBAS has been installed at SFO to augment satellite signals, which allows pilots to navigate with enhanced satellite accuracy. GBAS approaches to SFO can often be designed with more flexibility than standard approaches. Some of these approaches can be expected to create modified flight paths with decreased noise. The Roundtable has submitted concept for possible GBAS flight procedures, which, if implemented, could potentially decrease flight noise to residents. In 2016, the SFO Community Roundtable submitted recommendation to the FAA for changes to flight procedures which could decrease noise. After a multi-year FAA analysis and many stakeholder discussions, several of the recommendations were deemed feasible. And one of these recommendations, the night departure southbound transition, a nighttime noise abatement procedure, was implemented. Lastly, we invite you to visit the SFO Community Roundtable website, where you'll find the Noise 101 program and other aviation resources, along with Roundtable meeting materials, archives of previous meetings, and technical reports from the FAA, SFO, and Roundtable technical consultant. Thank you for joining us today for this Noise 101 introduction to the SFO Airport Community Roundtable. Okay, and now moving on to the FAA videos, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Joe Bird, Team Manager, FAA Air Traffic Organization, who will be handling the Q&A after the following two short FAA videos totaling about 13 minutes. Joe?
The modernization of our national airspace system should be safe, efficient, and sustainable. The FAA continuously collaborates and engages with stakeholders and communities to do just that. The United States is home to the world's busiest and most complex airspace system. The FAA's focus on NAS modernization makes flying safer, more efficient, and more predictable. This graphic describes the scope of the airspace infrastructure to be assessed with ongoing modernization efforts. Airspace infrastructure refers to the components required for vehicles to traverse the NAS safely and efficiently. This includes instrument flight procedures, IFPs, regulatory airspace, and air traffic control facility sector and position design. When we talk about airspace infrastructure, we are talking about more than just air traffic control facility boundaries or the volume of airspace individual controller is responsible for. We are talking about the integration of communications, navigation, surveillance, and traffic flow management. These components all come together to deliver safe and efficient air traffic services. Our objective is to deliver the right airspace and procedures to meet current and future needs, optimize the inventory so that the FAA does not maintain unnecessary procedures, and modernize the airspace and procedures to deliver maximum benefit within manageable scope. The FAA is developing an airspace modernization roadmap, which will serve as the agency's strategic plan to continuously evaluate and modernize the national airspace system. The roadmap builds on the 2016 PBN NAS navigation strategy. The agency is working to determine regional priorities and modernization schedules based on current and projected operations and associated needs within respective service areas. The FAA will also work with regional teams to consider airspace infrastructure priorities based on integrated qualitative and quantitative data analytics and analysis to provide optimal returns in safety, efficiency, and sustainability. To reach the next level of safety and efficiency, the FAA is continuously modernizing the airspace infrastructure so that it will accommodate expected growth in traditional operations and new entrants. Via our ongoing modernization efforts, the foundation and enabling elements of a modern aviation infrastructure are in place and delivering benefits today. Through collaboration with the aviation community, the FAA enabled the rebuilding of our aging infrastructure into a system that is prepared to accommodate new technologies and new entrants with a resiliency for future needs. The future NAS will continue to improve flight safety and ensure the safe accommodation of aircraft, as well as non-traditional types of aviation, such as commercial space and advanced air mobility. For more information about air traffic management modernization or the next generation air transportation system, visit faa.gov or go directly to the links provided.
So there'll be another video coming up.
Yes.
San Francisco International Airport has a unique set of challenges that can cause increases in air traffic and noise disturbances. The aircraft flying through it operate over a population of more than 6 million people. The Bay Area has 3 major airports: San Francisco International Airport, Oakland International Airport, and Norman Y. Mineta San Jose International Airport. The region has more than 150 airports, 20 of which have air traffic control towers. FAA air traffic provides safe, secure, and efficient management for the national airspace system and international airspace assigned to U.S. control. Air traffic is responsible for airport traffic control towers, both federal and contract, terminal radar approach control TRACON facilities, air route traffic control centers, and combined control facilities to guide aircraft through their various phases of flight. At the SFO Airport, tower controllers are responsible for all airport movement areas and airspace within approximately 5 miles of the airport and up to 2,000 feet above the surface. They separate all aircraft, including arrivals, departures, and overflights. The SFO tower controllers also issue clearances to allow visual flight rules, VFR, aircraft to enter, transition, or exit their airspace. They coordinate with Northern California TRACON and Oakland Control Tower regularly. Tower controllers are also responsible for ground vehicles in the protected area surrounding the runways and taxiways. Whether it is an aircraft, ground vehicle, or mower in the grass, everything that moves on the ground at an airport is controlled in some way by the controllers in the tower. In addition, controllers ensure flight plans for the aircraft are correct, give pilots permission to take off or land, cross runways, or taxi to active runways. Safety is the FAA's #1 concern and will always take precedence. Airplanes perform best and have the greatest safety margins when they land and take off into the wind. Runway and procedure modifications at SFO were developed with both safety and noise in mind. The tower will assign noise abatement preferred runways as long as wind and weather permit. If the tower assigns a noisier runway, it is because the pilot required that runway or the runway was required by regulation. It is important to note that pilots, not the tower, always have the final say as to which runway they use. The tower determines which runways are designated as the runway in use or active runway. The tower must use the charts above to consider the wind in making the active runway determination. The towers must also consider which runways are operationally advantageous, taking into account NorCal approach and OAK Airport operational constraints. Departures are paths assigned to an aircraft and determined by its destination. Departure routes out of the Bay Area must tie into the national route structure and then into the arrival route structure for the destination. The busiest air traffic corridor in California is between the LA Basin and the Bay Area. The arrival paths assigned to an aircraft are also determined by its destination. There are many factors, however, that can force an aircraft to alter its route once airborne. For example, weather, traffic volume, military activity, emergencies, and so on. This slide shows the major traffic flows into and out of the Bay Area for the West Plan. This means that Oakland is landing and departing runways 28 and 30, San Francisco is landing runway 28 and departing runways 1 or 28, wind dependent, and San Jose is landing and departing runway 30. West Plan is the predominant configuration and is typically used more than 80% of the time. San Francisco arrivals are routed over the Oakland and San Jose arrivals, but must be under the San Jose Loop boomerang departures. Oakland arrivals are routed over San Jose arrivals, but must be under the San Francisco arrivals and the San Jose Loop boomerang departures. Southbound departures off both Oakland and San Francisco are dynamically controlled to keep them separated from the San Jose departures and the San Francisco arrivals. These departures would typically be above oceanic arrivals. This slide shows the major traffic flows into and out of the Bay Area for the East Plan. This plan is the second most common plan and is used between 15 and 20% of the year. It is also common for the South Bay airports, like San Jose, to go to a south configuration, landing and departing runway 12 at SJC, while Oakland and San Francisco remain in a West Plan configuration. Community-driven initiatives are made possible through the FAA's ongoing community engagement efforts, coordination with the SFO Airport Community Roundtable, and collaboration with stakeholders. In 2022, at the request of the SFO Roundtable, the FAA agreed to route southbound aircraft departing SFO and OAK between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. over the SFO Bay and either out over the Golden Gate Bridge to Gobbs intersection before turning them south-southeast or down the bay using headings off runway 1 at SFO and runway 30 at OAK. This graphic shows the night hush procedures and some 120 degrees headings. The recent update to these procedures is one example of the change that originated with the community and was implemented through collaboration of various stakeholders. For more information about the Western Pacific Region Community Engagement, NorCal workshops, and the Instrument Flight Procedures Information Gateway, visit FAA.gov or go directly to the links provided.
Great, we're back. Two great short videos, a lot of information. And Mr. Bird, welcome again. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. And now it's time for questions for Mr. Joe Bird about the two videos that have been presented. If anyone would like to ask any question, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you to ask your questions. I see Member Bowles has her hand up. Member Bowles, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, this is all going so fast, so forgive me if I missed something, but I'm just trying to understand the night hush procedures, and yeah, I'm really excited that that was implemented. I'm in Pacifica, I still hear lots of planes that time of the night, so I'm assuming it's again because of wind direction, so sometimes they do the night hush and sometimes they don't.
It depends on what runway they take off of, but normally they should be going between 1 and 5. If they're going out to certain waypoints like Intel, which are all like fixes that are south of Oakland, southeast of Oakland and San Francisco and all that, they get assigned the night departure out of San Francisco. So we do have some that don't go on that depending on how they're filed. They may go out another way. But between 1 and 5, the majority of the ones, particularly that are on the stick departure, should be reassigned to night. One of the difficulties we have is that, or one of the things that we deal with is if there's any type of ground delays or weather or anything like that, that may either delay when we can go. So we may not be able to go until 1:30, right? So it just really depends on what's going on. But under normal, most circumstances, I will say they should start at 1 and go till 5 o'clock in the morning.
So, but flights heading east or like straight out to Asia or so forth would not necessarily be doing these procedures, right? So it's only
Correct.
a percentage that.
Correct. And if they need that runway that goes to the east 28, if they need to depart off of that, more than likely they're going to go out on something else. Because if you think about it, you have a big, large, heavy cargo aircraft, having to make that right turn and fly over the city and then come back to join the night would probably be more a safety issue, to be honest. So that's why we just let them continue to go out the way that they go out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question and for the answer, Mr. Burt, as well. Anyone else has any questions for Mr. Burt about the 2 videos that we have seen? I see Ms. Wentworth has her hand up.
Mr. Burt, I heard a question being mentioned in the video about the boomerang departures. Could you expand on that a little bit?
That's out of San Jose. I don't know a whole lot about it other than it basically goes south and then they turn around and turn and go north again. I don't know exactly what type of aircraft fly that or anything. I haven't really looked into that a whole lot, but that's what they mean by boomerang. Kind of goes south and then comes back over San Jose and goes north.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Burt? I tell you, after looking at the airspace and the complexities of the 3 airports really gets another level of appreciation of the hard work that really the towers and the TRACON have to do to make sure the space stays safe. And that's really, I think, what you folks focus on.
Yeah, and the other thing, Mr. Chair, is when you go back and you look at that graphic, either one of them, that's what makes it sometimes complex, right? The general public might say, well, I just don't understand why you can't move that procedure a half a mile to the west and then all the noise issues will be solved. Well, a lot of times it's kind of a snowball effect. You may have to move, if you move that one a half a mile, you may have to move 3 other procedures because now, they're all so in close confined space that it's not a matter of just changing one procedure. You may have to go to 2, 3, 4 procedures to just make that half mile shift. And then that's where we get into a lot of the difficulties of, hey, this isn't going to work. We try to come to you guys and let you know exactly why it doesn't work. And hopefully we're explaining that in a way that everybody understands. And if we're not, please let us know because we need to obviously adjust the way we're doing things. But a lot of times, it's not as easy as just moving one procedure a half a mile and call it good. We may have to, like I said, adjust numerous other ones. But we've been successful making some changes. Like we have one out of Oakland that we were able to change for them. We have the night. And we'll just keep working together and hopefully we'll get the noise level down to a more bearable level.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation and also clearly the constant communication and engagement is really what is needed to continue to try to solve these complex issues. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyone else has any question for Mr. Burt? Okay, thank you, Mr. Burt, for being with us. And again, thank you for those 2 videos that you had shared with us, very helpful. Okay, moving on. Our next video is by HMMH Group, and I'm pleased to welcome Gene Reindel, Vice President for HMMH and Technical Consultant to the SFO Community Roundtable, who will be handling the Q&A after the following video, which is about 28 minutes long. So we'll go ahead with the video, and then we'll hear from Gene, and we'll see if he'll answer your questions.
I'm Gene Reindel, Vice President with HMMH, which is a premier transportation noise consulting firm in the U.S. I'm also the technical consultant to the SFO Community Noise Roundtable, and I've been involved with the Roundtable since moving to Northern California in 1999. I'll be presenting on several topics in this session on aviation noise fundamentals, along with Kate Larson, who is our training leader and a senior consultant at HMMH. We will begin with noise regulations, both federal and state, then move on to discussing aircraft noise sources, sound propagation, and noise terminology associated with aviation. We will briefly discuss the pros and cons of measurements and modeling of aircraft noise and the difference between annoyance and land use compatibility. We will complete the session with information on sound insulation programs and describing a balanced approach to aircraft noise management. This slide provides all the pertinent federal regulations that have shaped and guided aviation noise in the U.S., beginning with the passing of the Aircraft Noise and Sonic Boom Act of 1968. Through the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012. The 1968 Act authorized the FAA to determine standards for measurement of aircraft noise and establish noise abatement regulations, which led to Parts 36 and 91 in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations. These parts provided the standards still in use today for the certification of aircraft as related to allowable noise levels. The very next year, Congress enacted NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, which directed all federal agencies to assess all environmental effects of proposed federal actions, including those of the FAA. I will discuss the current FAA guidelines in response to NEPA on the next slide. In 1972, Congress passed the Noise Control Act, which amended the Aircraft Noise and Sonic Boom Act of 1968 to include consideration of public health and welfare and to add the Environmental Protection Agency to the rulemaking process. It wasn't until 1979 that Congress directed the FAA to establish a single system to measure noise and determine exposure of people to noise and to identify land uses normally compatible with various aircraft noise levels. The FAA responded to this direction from Congress with Part 150 in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, which is known as the Guidelines to Airports for Land Use Compatibility Planning. However, Congress did not provide funding of noise compatibility projects until passing of the Airport and Airway Improvement Act in 1982. I will discuss Part 150 further also in subsequent slides. As airports began implementing Part 150 measures, including airport use restrictions and tailored aircraft procedures, Congress passed the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990, also known as ANCA. The FAA responded to ANCA with Part 161 in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, which greatly limited an airport in implementing restrictions and which provided 2 noise abatement departure profiles that airports could choose from so that pilots were not having to learn a different procedure at every airport. ANCA is also known as the regulation that began setting noise limits for aircraft. We know these limits as stages. We'll also discuss on a future slide in this presentation. I know this is a lot to take in, which is why this table is provided in the presentation for you to refer back to after this training. We will also go into more detail on those regulations that most affect the actions that airports, airport users, the FAA, and local jurisdictions can implement as a result of the current regulatory environment. While NEPA was enacted by the US Congress in 1969, there have been several regulations since that time to update its implementation. In addition, the FAA has updated their implementation of NEPA for federal actions related to aviation. This slide provides the current FAA guidance for the implementation of NEPA. Over recent years, there has been a lot of community concern with the FAA's use of CADX. There are 3 levels of environmental analysis at the FAA's disposal. The 3 levels range in complexity. The lowest level is a categorical exclusion, known as CADX. The FAA has identified these 6 federal actions listed on the right side of the slide that do not individually or cumulatively have a significant effect on the human environment. All other federal actions require an environmental assessment or they require the most complex level environmental impact statement. Regardless of the NEPA analysis level, the noise thresholds are the same in determining impact. The significant impact threshold is a 1.5 decibel increase within the 65 decibel CNEL area. CNEL will be discussed later, but suffice it to say that it is a cumulative noise metric representing an annual average 24-hour day with weightings of aircraft noise that occurs in the evening and night hours. In addition to the significant impact threshold, the FAA has set two less than significant impact thresholds, which are also reportable. 3 decibel increase between the 60 and 65 CNEL, and a 5 decibel increase in the 45 to 60 CNEL range. The FAA has also developed the color coding shown in the table in the bottom left of the slide for consistency in displaying significant and less than significant impact areas. Now we will shift to land use compatibility regulations. The FAA created the voluntary airport noise compatibility planning process in response to ANCA, or the Aviation Safety and Noise Abatement Act of 1970. This process is known as Part 150. Primary reason airports participate in this voluntary process is to obtain access to federal funding to help support the implementation of noise compatibility program measures aimed at reducing incompatible land uses near airports. It is worth noting that the intent of Part 150 is not to address community annoyance, but specifically to address land uses near airports that are deemed incompatible with aircraft operations. So Part 150 includes two primary elements. The first, the noise exposure map process, results in an inventory of incompatible land uses within the 65 CNEL contours. Second, the noise compatibility program results in a list of airport recommendations to reduce incompatible land uses. The FAA accepts or does not accept the documents submitted by the airport as meeting Part 150 requirements, and the FAA either approves or disapproves each of the airport recommended NCP measures individually. Those measures approved by the FAA are then potentially eligible for federal funding for implementation. Because neither the FAA nor the airports have control over land uses, regulation requires consultation with local land use jurisdictions during the Part 150 process. The FAA sees Part 150 as an opportunity for airport stakeholders and the communities surrounding the airports to weigh in on aircraft noise issues and on the recommended measures to address incompatible land uses. So the state of California also has a regulation to address incompatible land use, specifically at noise problem airports. Each county designates its airports as being noise problem airports or not. Regulation is known as Title 21, which requires the county to report the status of land use compatibility on a quarterly basis. It is important to know the terms used in Title 21 that are related to incompatible land use. First is the noise impact boundary, which is simply the 65 CNEL contour. The noise impact area is all incompatible land uses within the 65 CNEL contour. Because some land uses within the 65 are noise compatible, only those land uses incompatible with aircraft noise counts towards the noise impact area. For example, structures treated with sound insulation resulting in interior noise levels of 45 CNEL and lower are compatible, and so those properties are not included in the calculation of the noise impact area. Title 21 requires that the noise impact boundary be validated through noise measurements. Title 21 requires continuous noise monitoring at airports that have 1,000 or more homes within the noise impact boundary. Intermittent monitoring is allowed for airports with less than 1,000 homes within the CNEL 65 contour. The measurement of CNEL must include aircraft noise that exceeds 55 decibels. A higher threshold noise level can be used if the state has approved a waiver for the specific noise monitoring site. Measuring aircraft CNEL begins with the measurement of the single event noise exposure level, SENEL, The SENELs are then accumulated for each hour to produce the hourly noise levels, and finally CNEL is calculated from those hourly noise levels. For county designated noise problem airports that have incompatible land uses, the airport must apply to the state for a variance to operate. State may grant a variance for no more than 3 years at a time after considering issues such as feasibility of complying with Title 21, the level of noise impact, the value of airport services to the public, and whether the airport is making good faith efforts to address incompatible land uses.
The greatest sources of noise at and around an airport are aircraft operations. This includes aircraft in flight which are departing from or arriving to the airport, as well as aircraft movements or idling on the ground. The ground noise concerns at SFO include jet engines at start of takeoff roll, jet engines while taxiing and queuing up for departure, auxiliary power units, which are abbreviated APU, at gates, and the non-aircraft noise of other service equipment on the field. The graphic on the left side of this slide displays how federal noise regulations and technological improvements have changed aircraft noise over the last several decades. The small open shapes represent the manufacture dates of specific jet aircraft types. The placement of the shapes is relative to the horizontal timeline marked with the years 1960 through 2035, and to the vertical scale on the left side indicating relative noisiness. The relative noisiness is color-coded in the bands which correspond to the aircraft's stage certification, which refers to the ANCA regulation Jean mentioned earlier. Stage 2 aircraft, the oldest and noisiest aircraft shown on this graphic, have been completely phased out of service. As of 1977, all newly manufactured aircraft met Stage 3 standards. As of 2006, all met Stage 4 standards, and since 2017, all must meet Stage 5 standards. The vertical axis is labeled as the cumulative decibel difference in relation to Stage 3 limits. Stage 5 certification standards are at least 17 decibels quieter, with some aircraft achieving cumulative reductions of 30 decibels or more. It's important to understand that aircraft stage certification merely indicates that the aircraft type met the noise limits in place at the time of certification. As shown in the teal area of the graphic, some aircraft types that were certified as Stage 3 or as Stage 4 at the time of manufacture also meet Stage 5 noise limits. Therefore, while there are aircraft certified as Stage 3 or 4 still flying today, some of them meet Stage 5 requirements and are no louder than aircraft certified as Stage 5. The stages do not necessarily indicate the relative loudness. The graphic on the right shows noise footprints for selected aircraft types. Each of these footprints graphically show the noise of an arrival from the left of the page and a departure to the right. A bigger footprint is a louder aircraft. The image at the top is a Stage 2 Boeing 727. The second image is a 727 retrofitted to meet Stage 3 standards. And the third is an MD-83, which is an aircraft certified as Stage 3 that does not meet Stage 4 or Stage 5 noise limits. The remainder are aircraft certified as Stage 3, 4, or 5 from top to bottom, most of which also meet Stage 5 standards. Most operators have retired the retrofitted Stage 2 aircraft and the noisiest Stage 3 aircraft, which is why the General Accounting Office has recommended not phasing out Stage 3 aircraft, as was done with Stage 2 aircraft. Acoustics is the branch of the science of physics that deals with sound energy. This slide and the next few that follow explain some of the physical aspects of acoustics that mostly affect ground noise sources, such as aircraft operations on the airfield. Sound travels from a noise source, which in this case is aircraft, to locations of concern known as receivers. As the sound travels or propagates through the air in free field conditions, it decreases by 6 decibels every time the distance doubles. That decrease is actually somewhat greater due to the effects of atmospheric absorption. When the noise source is on the ground, there can be sound reflections that change the quality of the sound that is transmitted. Soft ground, such as fields, absorb more sound than hard ground, such as pavement or water. Sound propagation is also affected by weather conditions. When the air close to the ground is warmer than the air in the atmosphere above, the sound waves can bend upwards, reducing the sound intensity to nearby receivers on the ground. However, during a temperature inversion, for example, as the day's warmth rises at night, the sound waves can bend downwards, seeming to amplify the noise. Wind also influences sound propagation of ground noise. Locations that are upwind from a source may experience sound shadows, which reduce sound intensity, while people at locations that are downwind would hear the sound more clearly. The differences on either side of the noise source can vary by as much as 20 decibels due to wind effects. Part of the study of acoustics focuses on how people experience the sound energy. People characterize sounds by both the loudness, the magnitude of the sound waves, and by the pitch, the frequency of the sound waves. The graph on this slide has frequency on the horizontal axis and relative loudness on the y-axis. The three curves show different weighting schemes. The red curve represents the A-weighted sound. We use A weighting for all environmental noise analysis in the United States because it matches closely with how humans perceive loudness in our everyday environment. The frequencies between 1,000 and 6,000 hertz are accentuated slightly because that's where our hearing is most acute. Human speech falls in that frequency range. The lowest frequency sounds, think whale noise or lower, are de-emphasized. The lower the frequency, the more the sound energy is discounted. The highest frequency sound energy, think dog whistles, is also discounted in the A weighting. This is not to say that we do not hear low and high frequency sounds, but that we do not hear them as well as sounds in our speech frequencies. The FAA's Neighborhood Environmental Survey reconfirmed that annoyance tracks with A-weighted decibels. Sound levels fluctuate over time. The graphics on this slide all illustrate the same noise event that occurred within a 30-second time frame when an aircraft was flying over the sound level meter. We will use these graphs to explain three different single event noise metrics, starting with the most intuitive. The graph on the far left indicates that the sound level reached a peak of 102.5 A-weighted decibels, which we abbreviate as dB or dBA. That peak is labeled Lmax. Referring to the noise event by its maximum level is naturally and easily understood. However, when comparing different noise events and attempting to judge relative noisiness, it's important to consider the duration of the event in addition to its loudness. A short, loud event may be considered less intrusive than an event with a lower maximum, but which drags on longer. The middle graph here illustrates the concept of sound exposure level, which is abbreviated SEL, that calculates the sound energy contained in the entire event and reports the equivalent level of that sound energy compressed into 1 second. Using SEL allows comparison of different noise events by comparing the sound energy of the events. The single event noise exposure level, which we abbreviate SENEL, is a metric that uses this concept, incorporating all the noise from a particular event that is above a given threshold value. We also often use a noise metric which averages the fluctuating noise energy over a specific time period, representing the sound for the entire period by the decibel value for a steady noise level having the equivalent sound energy as the actual varying level. This equivalent sound level is abbreviated LEQ, and the time period can be any length. In the graph on the right, the LEQ for the 15 seconds shown is 96.5 dBA. LEQ can be calculated for any time frame of interest, such as a minute, an hour, a 6-hour school day, a 9-hour nighttime, a 24-hour day, and so on. The time period must be specified in the reporting of the values. As described in our discussion of federal and state noise regulations, relative noisiness in different locations is judged by a cumulative noise metric that incorporates both the loudness of noise events and a time aspect. How long do individual events last, and how often do they occur? In addition to considering the time of day when the noise is happening. CNEL is the cumulative metric used by the state of California. As depicted by this graph, CNEL is calculated from the hourly LEQ values, each of which has been calculated from the sound energy of the individual noise events occurring in that hour. To account for the increased intrusiveness of nighttime noise, which occurs when ambient sound levels are typically at their lowest and people are trying to sleep, a 10-fold weighting, equivalent to adding 10 decibels, is applied to noise events from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Likewise, evening noise events are weighted threefold, which is equivalent to adding 4.7 decibels to events between the hours of 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. DNL, the cumulative metric that has been adopted by the FAA, is akin to CNEL, but without the evening weighting. FAA allows for the use of CNEL in California because of the adoption of Title 21. Other noise metrics are sometimes used that relate more directly to how people experience noise on a daily level, as opposed to averaging. One of these metrics is number above, sometimes abbreviated NA. This metric counts the number of noise events whose maximum level exceeds a given threshold. In this graphic, an hour of measured noise is shown. The vertical axis indicates the decibel level. The number of events above 80 decibels, the blue line, is 1. The number of events above 70 decibels, the green line, is 3. And the number above 60 decibels is 6. A time above metric is also easily understood. For any given threshold, the number of seconds that the measured noise level is over the threshold is the TA value. TA can be expressed in any units of time, such as hours, minutes, or seconds. Community members often ask about noise measurements, especially in comparison to the computer-calculated noise values that come from noise modeling. Measurements are useful for collecting data on actual noise occurring in the community at the specific locations where monitors are installed. The map on this slide shows where the permanent monitors around SFO are placed. The monitors collect data on all sound from both aircraft noise sources and non-aircraft noise sources. When the system can correlate a noise event with an aircraft operation, the aircraft noise can be separated out, but the identification of aircraft noise from community noise is not always accurate. Certain SFO noise monitors provide measurement data that is used to validate the extent of the computer-generated noise contours, specifically the 65 CNEL contour, as stipulated by Title 21. Noise modeling calculates noise levels at thousands of evenly spaced grid points over the entire airport study area, far more points than the 20-odd measurement locations. The model calculates the noise contribution of every modeled aircraft operation. Modeling can generate past noise levels for comparison to measurement data, and modeling can also be used to predict future noise levels, given forecast scenarios of aircraft operations. FAA requires that modeling be used to determine noise contour lines, which in turn are the basis for federally funded noise mitigation programs addressing land use compatibility.
It is vitally important to understand the difference between land use compatibility, which is addressed via Title 21 in Part 150, using the 65 CNEL contours, and community annoyance, which is difficult to quantify. Community annoyance is not fully addressed through land use compatibility programs. Unlike land use compatibility, annoyance is not limited to the 65 CNEL contour. This fact is confirmed through the FAA Neighborhood Environmental Survey that showed that up to 40% of the population is annoyed at levels lower than 65 CNEL. It is also important to know that there are currently no regulations, federal or state, that address community annoyance with aircraft noise. The regulations address land use compatibility. However, as verified through the FAA's NES survey, DNL is correlated to community annoyance of aircraft noise. This can be assumed to apply to CNEL, as those two noise metrics are calculated similarly. One of the noise mitigation measures for incompatible land uses that is provided through Part 150 and Title 21 is sound insulation. Once sound insulation treatments are properly installed and the average interior noise level is 45 dB or less, The land use is deemed compatible under both Part 150 and Title 21 regulations, even though it is within the 65 CNEL contour. SFO was one of the first, if not the first airport to implement a sound insulation program. This resulted in SFO fully complying with Title 21 so that they do not require a state variance to operate. They have no incompatible land uses within the noise impact boundary. Not to imply that SFO has provided sound insulation to all structures within the 65 CNEL contour. SFO has made a reasonable attempt at providing mitigation to all incompatible structures through their noise insulation program, or NIP, but not all homeowners have applied for the voluntary program. Title 21 requirements have been met. Even so, SFO continues to provide two initiatives within their noise insulation program, or NIP. These are explained on the next two slides. Second Chance Initiative provides the opportunity for homeowners that did not previously submit applications to apply for the NIP. To be eligible for treatments, the property must be within the 65 CNEL contour of an FAA accepted noise exposure map. The average interior noise level of habitable rooms must be verified to be 45 dB CNEL or greater. The structure must have been built prior to October 1st, 1998, and the property owner must not have accepted noise insulation or an easement in previous NIP phases. The Replacement Initiative provides for the opportunity for eligible property owners to apply for replacement treatments to address deficiencies of those treatments that were previously installed to make the property compatible with aircraft noise. SFO must determine that there are deficiencies in the previously installed treatments for structures to be eligible for this initiative. If current deficiencies are a result of accidents or improper maintenance, they are not eligible for the replacement initiative. In the final topic on aviation noise fundamentals, I want to briefly address the need for a balance of aircraft noise management techniques, such as those in operation at SFO. Airport noise offices strive to maintain an equilibrium that allows for the continued safe operation of the airport while minimizing adverse effects of aircraft noise. In addition, the noise office addresses community concerns, explains the function and operation of the airport, and is a resource for media relations. This is accomplished successfully through collaboration, transparency, and responsiveness.
Thank you both Ms. Larson and Mr. Rindell. A wealth of information presented here in the video about noise fundamentals. Appreciate you being with us. And Jean, welcome again. Jean is with us to take any questions that anyone might have on the video presented. Let me go to my attendee list. If anyone has any question for Jean, please raise your virtual hand and I will recognize you and give you the floor. I don't see any hands raised up in the attendees list. Kathleen, do you have any questions or comments?
I wonder if Jean would care to comment on the way that the current FAA Federal Register request for information on the noise policy review may fit in with some of the standards that he covered during the slide presentation, how they might be improved or changed.
Yeah, I'll do so, trying to do it in a nutshell. I know we spent a lot of time at the last roundtable meeting talking about the Federal Register notice on the Civil Aviation Noise Policy Update. Essentially, the day-night average sound level noise metric, or DNL, is that the right metric for how it's being used currently by the FAA? That's one of the questions they're asking. They're also asking if it is in 65 the right threshold level for land use compatibility, and then also for the NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act projects, is 1.5 decibel increase within the 65 DNL the right threshold for significant impact. So they're asking those types of questions. The FAA is asking those types of questions in their Federal Register notice to help guide them in updating the civil aviation noise policy, which has not been updated since the 1970s. I think 1976, actually. I would also like to add, since I have the floor here, that I know it's a lot of information, a lot of technical jargon that was used in the noise fundamentals presentation. I would suggest going in back and listening to it later a couple of times, because I think things sink in and you kind of understand things differently each time you kind of review that. So I applaud this roundtable for actually storing these recordings so that they're available to the membership.
Thank you, Gene. Great point. And this entire program in its entirety will be available at the SFO Community Roundtable website for future viewing by members or members of the public as well. So it'll be available for all to see. And questions could actually really be channeled to us at a later time. So we're always available at Gene, HMMH group, or staff, Ms. Wentworth, and myself. We're always available to answer those questions. So thank you again, Gene and Ms. Larson, for your presentation. And let me just take a quick look, make sure no one has their hands up before I let you go, Gene. All right, I don't see any hand. Actually, well, there is one from Vice Chair Royce. Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gene, just a quick one. We've been talking about noise metrics as they apply to the overhead flights, or actually the three main airports. Are the noise results similar to the regional airports? Are we getting any kickback on thresholds being exceeded at regional airports outside the three main airports in our region?
The standard applies to all airports, regardless of the size, capacity, and purpose. Whereas SFO is a commercial airport with, even international and domestic passenger flights. But the same standard applies to even, I'll mention Reed Hillview, which is one of the first general aviation airports in the area, which is just outside of San Jose, where Amelia Earhart actually learned to fly. But no, their noise standards are still the same at 65 day-night average sound level for land use compatibility.
And are those records kept and are accessible if someone wanted to access those?
For any of the noise problem airports, they are those quarterly reports. Quarterly noise reports are required to be filed at each quarter or within 90 days at the end of each calendar quarter. And so those airports that the counties have designated as noise problem airports, for which I think there are 10 or 12 is all in the state of California, those are accessible. And then any airport that has undertaken the Part 150 program under the federal regulations, those reports, the latest noise exposure maps are provided on the FAA's website, or you can go to the airports to find them.
Okay. Thank you, Gene. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you both. And I don't see any other hands raised up. Gene, thank you again for being with us. And that will take us to the end of our first segment. Welcome back. And we'll move on to our last video, which is from SFO International Airport. And I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Bert Ganong, manager of the SFO Noise Office, and Paul Hanna, the SFO GBAS team, both of whom will answer questions at the conclusion of the two SFO videos.
Hello, and welcome to Aircraft Noise 101 from the San Francisco International Airport perspective. Today, we'll cover generally a little bit about noise from SFO's perspective, the aircraft noise abatement procedures monitoring, and some of our resources, in particular our website. The SFO Noise Office. The SFO Aircraft Noise Office is a middle agency. We deal with quite a few groups such as federal and state agencies, community, airlines, elected officials from local governments, and the aviation industry as a whole. Some of the logos of those agencies are here, and you see a grand photo in the middle of the Airport Community Roundtable in our Louis A. Turpin Aviation Museum. Our mission? Well, we serve as a link between the public, airline operators, and federal agencies. Our goal? Provide a clear and accessible information to our communities that we serve. We ensure the SFO meets or exceeds all federal and state aircraft noise regulations. Aircraft operate as quietly as possible. And we know that SFO has a very large economic footprint in the Bay Area. And also, we realize that we're environmental stewards. Our mission, to provide exceptional airport service to our communities, includes addressing noise issues. SFO is very proud of having a long list of historical firsts, but just a few of them. The airport was the first in 1983 to do a noise compatibility program study. And for those of you who are sticklers, it wasn't called a noise compatibility program at the study at the time, but since we were the first, it was accepted as one under the FAA's Federal Aviation Regulation Part 150 Noise Compatibility Program study. Allowed for us to get funding for the Residential Sound Installation Program, which included more than 15,000 homes, 8 places of worship, and 7 schools. SFO was also the first airport to seek early phase out of noisier aircraft in the United States. Aviation buffs will know that the year 2000 was the demarcation between Stage 2 and Stage 3 aircraft, Stage 3 being quieter. SFO had achieved 98% at about 2 years prior to that. The first airport to track aircraft with noise management system also goes to SFO in 1975. So more of our accomplishments. The airport's nationally recognized collaborative community process since 1970, when we dealt with the noise issues and started speaking with the public. Outcome of that was the Airport Community Roundtable, as you heard earlier. Another issue that we dealt with head-on, land use compatibility zoning. We worked with the surrounding communities to preserve land uses in areas under flight paths, making sure they're compatible. The community noise exposure level. We've been very successful in reducing the size of our 65 decibel CNEL noise impact boundary. Back in 1976, there were over 35,000 people within the 65 decibel contour. Well, SFO is owned and operated by the City and County of San Francisco. It is landlocked within San Mateo County. The airport does serve as the landlord in a broad definition of the terms, much like a shopping mall in your area. The airport does have some control over issues such as when the tenants, airlines, can do maintenance run-ups, testing of the engines. We have certain restrictions for that at night. We're also the most visible and closest point of contact for the community, and generally in charge of explaining and implementing noise programs. So the airport's pretty responsible for maintaining noise levels and reporting them to the public, as well as taking remedial actions in soundproofing homes in high noise areas. The SFO aircraft noise management structure, breaking it into 5 areas of quieter planes. We advocate for future quieter technology and ensure that the residents share in the benefits. Quieter procedures. We're assisting in developing noise mitigation procedures that benefit communities. Working with communities. We have open and transparent communication leading to constructive dialogue and good outcomes. Understanding community concern, provide accessible information. Land use planning and mitigation. We reduce the environmental impact through compatible land use planning through residential sound insulation program. And our noise program, we monitor the existing flight operations, follow up with the airlines if there are deviations, and report back through our Fly Quiet program and our noise action plan. How does the noise management system work? Well, basically we have input, analysis, and output. Input, we take in flight track data, weather data, wind speed, audio files, noise reports, general information from as many sources as we can tap. We then do analysis, and that's performed by the noise office staff and our consultants. And the output of this is generally reports, noise contours, and information. Our procedures, major arrival and departure routes, on-airport noise restrictions, nighttime preferential runway use, general aviation program that we watch, and the Fly Quiet program. Our noise abatement procedures combine elements of the Federal Aviation's Part 150 Noise Compatibility Plan, the City and County of San Francisco noise resolutions, the FAA's air traffic control, and the Airport Community Roundtable. Looking at runway use, departure and arrival procedures goes into, well, our voluntary and regulatory programs, but safety always takes precedence over noise abatement procedures. Key components, we use the water-facing runways whenever wind and weather conditions allow. The runways 1 left and 1 right facing north are best for departures because they get the aircraft over water. Runway 28 left and 28 right are best for arrivals because they keep the aircraft over the bay. Over water flights for departures, we're looking at approximately 80%, and for arrivals, 99%. On this slide, we're looking at SFO's noise abatement procedures, mainly our operations, the West Plan and the Southeast Plan. West Plan is what you might consider our standard flow for all the airports in the Bay Area, and the Southeast Plan is a general reverse flow for when weather comes through the Bay Area. Mention that we do this for safety, and that's when we operate into the wind. The air traffic control tower makes the call on which runways are in use at a given time. Generally speaking, west flow is 97%, Southeast Plan is approximately 3%. In our Fly Quiet program, we monitor the Airport Community Roundtable initiative that we implement at the airport. It encourages individual airlines to operate as quietly as possible at SFO. We promote a participatory approach in complying with noise abatement procedures and objectives by grading an airline's performance and making the scores available to the public via publications and public meetings, and occasionally it's published. The first item is our fleet noise quality. We award points for quiet aircraft. We compare SFO's operations to the national fleet mix of a given airline. We're happiest when we see them using their quieter airplanes here at SFO. The second item is the noise exceedance rating. We have 29 monitors up and down the peninsula, and they're continually monitoring noise on the peninsula. We do have maximum decibels set with a 10 decibel penalty for nighttime at each of our monitors when we evaluate. The next components of our Fly Quiet program are the nighttime preferential runway use, where we ask that the airlines depart over water between 1 and 6 a.m., depart over land and turn over water, and then least prefer to be depart and climb over land. For the shoreline departures, which are going back to the one before and departing over land, turning over water, for runway 28 to the west, keeps aircraft east of Highway 101, primarily a visual procedure. The gap departure rating. We rate airlines based on individual aircraft and whether it's operating domestically or internationally. Generally speaking, higher is better, and we compare the similar aircraft, as I mentioned, on similar routes, and criteria is based on historical factors. The last of our components are the Foster City Fly Quiet rating and the Fly Quiet program. 2 points for a good arrival, those in green out over the bay, 1 for a marginal in yellow, and 0 for a poor arrival, red. In particular, those flying through the outlined red home plate looking shape over Foster City. It's limited to jet airlines arriving between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. to runways 28 left and right. The results of our Fly Quiet program, airlines have responded favorably. They want to improve. Scores are going up, noise is going down. The awards to recognize the airlines are the quietest flying airline, which is a mathematical formula, the most improved airline, those that have improved the most over the year, and the Chairman's Award. This one's somewhat arbitrary, but it's based on airlines that participate with the roundtable and or the Aircraft Noise Office. We report those to the chairman, and based on the observation and the performance, we'll make the selection. The Airport Director's Report is produced monthly. We have many items that we're observing here for the regulatory as well as the voluntary noise abatement procedures at SFO. And there are more than what I'm showing here, but I just wanted to call out a few of them for your observation. Recommend you go to the website for more, but we have aircraft noise levels by site and by the different noise correlations that we have. Operations numbers, we have airlines, aircraft types, how many by day, noise reports, which are the reports given to us by individuals, and how many. Some key takeaway items for us today. Although noise has decreased over the last 40 years, it had been stable for the last 10 years through 2019. Obviously, COVID had a big hit on that, and noise dropped considerably. With the recovery of flights following COVID, we're seeing an increase in noise issues. NextGen also contributed to that, as well as social media and political engagement. The current standard for land use compatibility and noise impact is day-night level 65 decibels. Hearing impacts from airport noise, unlikely in nearby communities. Other health effects are complex and being studied. Annoyance to aircraft noise seems to be increasing, is currently being reviewed by the FAA in various ways. The Noise Office is working on noise items such as ground-based noise that are not governed by state or federal government and are part of being a good neighbor. Attitude towards the noise source is an important influence on annoyance levels, and our website, noise.flysfo.com, is your best resource for questions and information. I've included this cartoon. It was procured by one of the former coordinators for the roundtable from the author, and I thought it should be reused. Best way to get a hold of us, noise abatement office at flysfo.com, and best source for information where you can do a lot of research as well as looking at things that you can control to view the noise, noise.flysfo.com. Thank you.
The ground-based augmentation system at the San Francisco International Airport is an airport-owned navigational aid that is part of an industry-leading effort to explore and implement approach procedures that reduce noise. The GBAS, as we often refer to it, augments the existing satellite-based navigation capabilities of aircraft. This is achieved through the installation of remote satellite monitoring units, which are very small antennas installed in precisely known locations on the airport. Each of these antennas receives information from the GPS constellation, which is used to calculate real-time position correction information specific to the Bay Area and the runways at SFO. The corrections are transmitted to arriving flights, enabling properly equipped aircraft with a trained flight crew to improve their three-dimensional positional accuracy from hundreds of meters to a very precise 10 to 15 meters. In a constrained airspace environment like the Bay Area, navigating to this level of precision enables new opportunities to enhance safety, improve existing approach procedures, or create new precision paths to the runways. But what makes the SFO GBAS innovative is not limited to the navigational technology, but the process that SFO, the FAA, and the Bay Area communities are undertaking to collaboratively evaluate and establish new innovative GLS procedures and even potentially turn off procedures that do not meet the project goals. The GBAS project at SFO has 4 goals. First and most important is to reduce noise impact to the community. This will be achieved through the evaluation, implementation, and monitoring of GLS approach procedures that take advantage of the NAVAID's unique capabilities. This includes a combination of higher altitudes for aircraft on approach, steeper angles of descent, and the creation of repeatable paths that keep descending aircraft more closely focused over the water. The second project goal is to create redundant ILS capabilities. Today, the San Francisco International Airport is served by 3 instrument landing systems on runways 28 left, 28 right, and 19 left. For many years, each of these precision NAVAIDs has provided safe flight paths for aircraft landing at SFO under inclement weather conditions. However, instrument landing systems are very sensitive to construction activities or large objects that pass in front of them. This results in multiple times during the year when one or more ILS are out of service. The SFO GBAS will enable the airport to maintain ILS-like capabilities regardless of construction activities or during periods of high aircraft operational volume. The third goal is to enhance the efficiency of approach operations into the airport. This will be achieved through the design of more direct paths to the runways that yield reduced track miles. Optimization of the vertical profile will also yield a more energy-efficient descent that reduces fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, the fourth project goal is to reduce delays. This will be achieved through a combination of enabling the GLS for use under the existing closely spaced parallel runway operation and by adding precision approach capabilities to runway ends that have never been capable of having an ILS. This is particularly true for runways 10 left, 10 right, and 19 right, which do not have an ILS, and the potential addition of a first ever Category 2 approach on runway 19 left using the GBAS. It is important to note that the ground-based augmentation system cannot increase the number of arriving or departing aircraft at the airport. The maximum rate of arrivals and departures into SFO is achieved under excellent weather conditions when air traffic control does not instruct pilots to use an instrument approach procedure like a GLS. Therefore, achieving the project goals will maximize the safety and resiliency of the airport while reducing noise impact, but it will not enable more flights than the closely spaced intersecting runways can support. In order to achieve the project goals, there are several important pieces of information to know about ground-based augmentation systems in the United States and the GBAS here at SFO. First, a single GBAS can maintain 48 unique approach procedures, which are referred to as GBAS Landing System, or GLS approaches. These can be distributed amongst one or more ends of the runway. For example, one runway could have 48 different GLS approaches, or each runway end could have 6 GLS approaches. Today, the GBAS project team has been focused on approaches to runways 28 right and 28 left, as 95% of all flights land on one of those 2 runways. Second, the current range at which an aircraft's satellite-based navigation can be augmented by the GBAS is limited to 23 nautical miles away from the NAVAID. However, the precision navigation portion of the approach segment, 10 to 15 meter accuracy, is limited to 10 nautical miles from the end of a runway. This is because the current FAA approach procedure design criteria for a GLS limits the precision augmentation to only the final approach segment. In the future, this may be expanded to cover other portions of the approach, or could potentially be applied to arrivals or even departures in the distant future. Today, approximately 30% of flights arriving into San Francisco are capable of using GLS approaches. However, all new narrow-body and wide-body aircraft currently in production or planned have the ability to fly GLS approaches. We therefore expect to see the percentage of GLS-capable operations at SFO increase year over year. Today, the top two operators of GLS approaches are United Airlines and Delta Airlines, followed by multiple international air carriers that take advantage of the global availability of GBAS and GLS approaches in their home countries. It is also important to note that Southwest Airlines is currently in the process of training their flight crews to use GLS approaches with a target activation date later in 2023. Knowing the capabilities of the GBAS and the increasing number of GLS-capable narrow-body and wide-body aircraft arriving into SFO, the GBAS project team has developed a multi-phased strategic timeline to achieve the project goals. The first phase of the GBAS project is referred to as Gaining Experience. In this phase, 4 GLS approaches have been developed by the FAA, which are identical to the existing ILS and RNAV GPS approach procedures to runways 28 left, 28 right, 19 left, and 19 right. By using GLS procedures that are identical overlays, both laterally and vertically, of existing procedures, this gives the airlines and air traffic stakeholders an opportunity to experience GLS flight operations within the established terminal airspace environment. This is also an important phase for the airport, who owns and operates the NavAid under supervision from the FAA's non-federal NavAid program. Starting off with procedures that all aviation stakeholders are familiar with maximizes safety while achieving at least ILS redundancy. The 4 existing overlay approaches are shown here. The portion of each GLS approach procedure that is being augmented by the GBAS is the final approach segment shown in a green box on each diagram. All other portions of the GLS approaches are intended to be flown under standard RNAV GPS navigation using RNP 1. The GPA, or glide path angle, is the angle that the aircraft will descend towards the runway when measured relative to the surface of the Earth. The typical value recommended by the FAA is 3.00 degrees, but on runways 28 left and 19 right, you may notice that the GPA is different. These values are identical to the existing ILS and RNAV glide path angles and are established to ensure that both the existing ILS and soon the GLS can be used with the closely spaced parallel runway operation. The next phase of the GBAS strategic vision is currently underway, which we refer to as expanding the capabilities. This is the first phase, which provides an opportunity to achieve all 4 of the project goals, including noise reduction. This will be achieved through the implementation of what we call Group 1 innovative GLS procedures, along with other important safety and delay reducing enhancements to the GBAS and GLS. The innovative Group 1 GLS procedures were first identified by an SFO GBAS Flight Procedures Subcommittee consisting of representatives from the FAA, airlines, manufacturers, and airport consultants. The subcommittee collaboratively worked through existing FAA instrument procedure design criteria to identify GLS procedures which could achieve the project goals without significant deviations from established FAA airspace and procedure design constraints. This included lateral constraints, shown on the left-hand side of the screen, which maintain safe aircraft separation from aircraft departing SFO and other aircraft arriving and departing into other Bay Area airports like Oakland. Subcommittee participants also identified the need for Group 1 innovative procedures to adhere to existing altitude and speed limitations, which are designed to promote the safe exchange of aircraft from one air traffic control environment to another. These constraints, shown on the right-hand side, limited the ability for several existing procedures to optimize the entire descent into SFO, but still provided opportunities to explore higher altitudes in the intermediate and final approach segments. Within these constraints, 24 procedure concepts were identified by the subcommittee, resulting in 12 concepts that were put forward to the community for further feedback and evaluation. From there, 8 innovative Group 1 procedures were selected by the SFO Roundtable and requested by the airport for FAA development and publication. The lateral tracks for some of the 8 procedures are shown on the right-hand side of the screen, which includes a new down the bay approach, which maximizes an overwater path before connecting to the GBAS precision approach. All procedures shown on the left side of the screen are currently awaiting publication targeting March of 2024 and can be tracked via the FAA Instrument Flight Procedure Gateway link shown on the bottom left. Once the innovative Group 1 procedures have been published by the FAA, the SFO GBAS project team and SFO Noise Abatement Office will begin an important phase of the GBAS project, which we call Measure. This phase, which will come into effect during the Expand Capabilities phase, is intended to gather quantitative data about the effectiveness of the innovative Group 1 procedures at achieving the project goals. Measuring a GLS procedure's ability to meet the project goals will involve a combination of examining which aircraft and airlines are flying the GLS procedures, comparing the aircraft and flight crew track to the procedure design track, and gathering noise information from both permanent and portable noise monitors. All information is intended for SFO to evaluate whether a procedure is succeeding at achieving the project goals or if it may be contributing to noise events. If a GLS procedure is leading to increased noise, SFO's unique role as the owner of the NavAid will enable the team to temporarily or permanently deactivate that GLS procedure. However, if a GLS procedure is found to be achieving its project goals, then it may be worthwhile to explore methods for other non-GLS aircraft to take advantage of it where possible in a subsequent project phase. The next phase of the GBAS project involves two different opportunities to better achieve the project goals. The first is to increase the utilization of any Group 1 innovative procedures that are found to have met the project goals of noise reduction, efficiency, and reducing delays. The second is to further innovate and improve with GLS procedures that either required deviations to existing FAA design criteria or had lower utilization opportunities due to aircraft separation. This second group of procedures that we refer to as Group 2A is actively being explored both with the Flight Procedures Subcommittee and with members of the public. Compared to Group 1 innovative procedures, Group 2A innovative procedures are permitted to take advantage of higher altitudes at the start of the approach, and even the possibility of relocating certain segments of the approach procedures to locations where they don't currently reside. Both of these may lead to more opportunities for optimized profile descent and noise reduction, but they have the side effect of limiting their overall usage to certain weather conditions or late-night operations when few other aircraft are in the vicinity of the airport. There are currently 6 Group 2A innovative GLS procedures under evaluation with members of the public, including the SFO Roundtable. Each of these procedures is being explored through the SFO GBAS Project Team Community Flight Procedure Packages, or CFPPs. Each CFPP includes information about the procedure being evaluated for public feedback, including a 3-dimensional profile, insight about its intended usage, single event SEL noise calculations, and the aircraft performance and configuration that was used to calculate the single event noise. Examples of a CFPP can be seen on this slide. Additional information about both the Group 1 and Group 2A innovative procedures can be found on the noise.flysfo.com website under the Ground-Based Augmentation System section. This includes interactive maps to permit interested members of the community to explore the calculated noise contours in more detail, including both SEL and LMAX metrics. It also provides an extensive question and answer section collected from public meetings and direct questions sent to the project team via the email address sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. Beyond Group 2A, the SFO GBAS project team will continue to seek out more complex and innovative solutions available to airports with an established GBAS and effective GLS procedures. These include opportunities to explore dispersed flight paths using multiple precision navigation tracks, and even virtually displaced thresholds, which further increase the altitudes of aircraft over residential areas, reducing noise on long-established procedure tracks. However, there are barriers to exploring these future innovative GLS procedures, which will require additional investments in FAA staffing and technology. These investments cannot be provided by the airport and instead require continued regional, national, and even international collaboration with the FAA and airlines. But the project will continue to collaborate closely with members of the community to gather important insight on innovative GLS concepts to explore and gather feedback on aircraft flying current and future GLS approaches into SFO. We look forward to any questions you might have today or in the future and encourage you to visit our website or send us an email at sfo.gbas@flysfo.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hanna and Mr. Ganong, for your presentations. Very informative and very helpful. Would like to see if any members who have any questions. Good to see you both again. Anyone has any question for Mr. Hanna or Mr. Ganong on their presentations? Well, I think you've done a wonderful job that there are no questions. Well, great that you are here. Again, we remind everyone and those who will eventually end up viewing this presentation and this training program that questions could be fielded to you or to the roundtable or the FAA for that matter, or HMMH group at a later time, and we'd be more than happy to respond, or you more than happy as well to respond. You put your website and how to reach you and so forth. So again, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you being here. And I wish you a good day. And that will really bring us to our last segment, which is the conclusion of this training. I really hope that you found that this training provided you with additional information and knowledge, enabling you to actively contribute to the ongoing discourse surrounding aircraft noise reduction and implications. I want to provide my thanks to the FAA, San Francisco International Airport, HMMH Group for their important contribution to Noise 101. And thank you all for attending this SFO Airport Community Roundtable training.